Golding, sir. Yes, afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, well, welcome to this cozy set. I want you to feel as comfortable as possible. When I, thought about this sit-down, this exclusive sit-down, my vision of it is, yes, we know about you as the attorney, the investment banker, the politician, the opposition leader.
Right.
We know that you have your first-class honors from Oxford University in law. We know that you also got the Commonwealth scholarship for the University of London to do your master's. Mm-hmm. So we know all these things, which to me, these things are Googleable things, right? Yeah. We know that, yes, you started, co-founded Bwoyatingz and Golding in 1993, which was a long time ago. I was still in my diapers then. Yeah. And that was Jamaica's first
I was just out of mine.
You're just out of your diapers, but I was still in my diapers, right? And that was Jamaica's first private sector investment bank. Yeah. And we know that Portia Simpson Miller, appointed the Senate in the early 2000s.
2007.
To be exact.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I wanted to know more about Mark Golding, the figure, the politician, the attorney, the businessman, but also the father, the grandfather.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know, or I've seen, or I've done my research, I'm a no I maybe sing a little tune and things. So maybe through this episode, you guys can even sing a little song, maybe. But I just want you to feel as comfortable as possible.
Can cover that.
Well, hopefully, that'll build me, right? I want to, take it a bit back.
Yeah.
About young Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about the relationship with your dad. How was that like?
Yeah, well, it's a very seminal part of my identity because my father was a very special person. Mm-hmm. He got married and had his children relatively late. I think when I was born, he was 44. So he was always somebody who was, middle-aged from I knew him, but he was a very energetic person. He was a brilliant man. He was a professor of orthopedic surgery, Jamaica's first orthopedic surgeon. He'd come here in the 50s. And he was really only coming for a short contract at UWI. He was on his way to the University of Chicago for a post. But when he came, the Kendall crash occurred. Yes. And he was put in charge of the medical response to that. And then there was the polio epidemic of the 50s. And he was put in charge of the medical response to that by the government of the day. And he got very involved in that and built what is now the Sir John Golding Rehab Center, but it was then called the Polio Center. Yeah. And it morphed, after the polio was brought under control, it morphed into a general rehab center for persons with physical disabilities. Yes. So his whole career in Jamaica, apart from as a surgeon up at the University Hospital, was around dealing with persons with disabilities and trying to empower them, building institutions to support the empowerment of persons with disabilities. So my relation with him was one of, great love and respect. And he was a serious guy, you didn't ramp with him. Yes. But he was also a very loving person. And, I miss him terribly. He died in 1996. Yeah.
Basically, he served the people, right?
Yes,
do you think that trait you got from him?
Definitely. He has been my moral compass in my life, and but myself and my sister both really admired his work, the energy he brought to it, his dedication to people and to service without seeking a personal reward. Mm-hmm. So that has been part of the culture of my home. Mm-hmm. My mother also was a public servant, because my mother, she was one of the first 3 women to join the civil service in Jamaica in an administrative position, not as a teacher or as a secretary or something, but as an administrative cadet. And she served in what was then the Central Planning Unit for about 10 years. And then she joined my dad at the rehab center and spent the rest of her career really as a volunteer, essentially supporting his work. So that was part of the ambience at home was one of, looking out for people who need help, basically.
I love that though. Can we also talk about you growing up in Mona? Mm-hmm. What was that like as a young child? What memories comes to your mind first?
I grew up in a community called College Common, which is on the university campus and is really the residential complex for academics and senior administrators. And it was a lovely community where everybody kind of roamed and went to each other's house and played in each other's yard. And so, we rode our bicycles around the community up onto campus. We had good relationships with Hermitage and Augustown, which were next door communities.
Yes.
The guys used to come and play ball with us there. It was a big football community. And at the time, the people who I was hanging with were the sons and daughters of, this was in the 1970s I'm talking about. So it was the progressive-minded people, because UWE's academic faculty was, strongly progressive in that era. So we had like George Beckford, who wrote, Small Garden, Bitterweed. His children were part of our crew, and many others. In fact, even Trevor Monroe lived on the campus, on College Common at the time. And so it was that kind of vibe, and black consciousness, the music we listened to, it was a very outdoor type of life, a lot of football, cricket, bicycle riding, where there was a river, the overflow from the Mona Reservoir ran through the community, and we used to fish in that river and swim in it too when it was rainy time. Yeah, it was just it was a wonderful environment.
Somebody told me that you used to like going to parties a lot back then, right? Every once in a while, they'd go to look and dance, say, let's stand up right, respect the sound box there, and just, take in the entire experience. At what point of your life was that? Was it at Campion, after Campion?
Yeah, that was, I would say I started doing that late teen years, into my 20s. Yes. I was always keen on music. I used to sing in the Mona Prep Boys Choir, was a soloist there at one point, and I was in a couple of bands as a teenager, and I really admired dancehall music. I admired the craft of the DJ performing live, you know. So from Brigadier Jerry coming through to Super Cat and Peter Metro and others, I used to rate them, and just how clever they were in producing the lyrics, their use of the language, and how descriptive, how exciting it was for the audience. So, and then of course, the whole sound system vibe was just musically very powerful. So, yeah, I used to follow Jalov and Black Star, Black Star was from Standpipe, I think, up by us, and Metro Media, Kilimanjaro, and other sounds like that. Yeah, so that was a thing.
That's my sources were right then.
Yeah, man, right. Yes.
No, also a lot of people, think that you're an investment banker by profession, but people didn't know that you're an actual attorney. Yeah. Now tell me, how did that transition into Darren Bunting and Golding, how that idea came about? Yeah. Because passed to the bar, 1990,
I believe so.
Was it?
Yeah.
And now you're 3 years later thinking about opening an investment banker business.
Yeah.
How you got into that?
Well, let me tell you. All right, so I'm a lawyer by profession, and I still practice law to this day in a very low-key way, because I don't have much time for it, but I have bills to pay, so I have to do something. Right?
Yes, right.
But in those days, I had, as you had mentioned, I went back to the University of London and did after finishing Norman Manley Law School, I went back and did a master's in commercial and corporate law. And I specialized in the law of credit and security, which is really about financial transactions. When I came back to Jamaica, I was at a firm downtown, Duncox. And Chris Deering and Peter Bunting were two young bankers. They had been both at Citibank, and they were both kind of headhunted by businessmen who were starting merchant banks at the time. It was a time when there was a proliferation of new merchant banks. It was really small boutique financial houses. And I knew them because they had been at Campion, and I knew them from
Campion. So
Campion and through friends, I mean, my sister, Peter Bunting's first wife's brother was my brethren too. So different things like that. Yeah. Anyway, so they now decided that they wanted to set up their own shop, And by that time, I was doing their legal work because they were doing a lot of innovative things in these manufacturers, merchant bank and corporate merchant bank. They were doing a lot of new products, financial products. And, I was the person helping them to implement those things from a documentation point of view. So they would come up with the commercial idea, the financial idea. And my job was then to make sure that it was lawful, how it could be done within the law, and documenting it, and the processes to make it efficient, and so on. So I enjoyed that, and they respected how I worked. And so they asked me to come with them on this journey.
Officially, no?
We met down at, Peter Bunting was then running NIBJ, actually, by that time in 1993. And we had lunch together one day, and we were talking about this idea and what we would call it. And it was, for me, it felt like, just brainstorming and not, like something that would happen at one time, perhaps in the future.
All right, yeah, man, yeah.
Then the next day, Chris not resign him job, man, and tell me to form the company. And it was all systems go. Yeah. So, that was that. That was how DBNG started.
Just like that.
Just like that. And when we started, we were operating from he was living in a house on Lady Musgrave Road in a townhouse there, and we were operating from his living room for the first 6 months or so. And we raised money. We went to the market to issue shares on the basis of a business plan with no track record, other than the fact that they had both been successful in what they had done before. And to some extent, I was already starting to be well known as a corporate lawyer. So it came together, we raised the money we were seeking, and the rest is history, really. We sold it in 2006, which is, about 13 years later, having built a very successful business with a lot of different aspects to it.
Being in a living room for 6 months.
Young
youths. And I can relate to me and my Bridget, I talk about an idea, maybe I say, yeah, man, we're going to start up this venture, whatever. Did you at that time think to yourself that this is something major or will be major at any point in the formative years?
I thought it had tremendous potential because I knew that they were in their own right brilliant. Peter Bwoyatingz is a very astute, clear-minded financial analyst and entrepreneur. And Chris Daring is a marketing guy. He was also strong technically, but he had a great sense for salesmanship and marketing. So it was a good mix. And I was kind of just a technician really at that point, doing the legal work to make sure everything was properly done. So, it's a funny story, when we raised that money, this was like June or July of 1993, I think. Don Cox acted as a registrar to the offer, so all the money came to them, right, to be tallied up and all that. So when the offer closed, it was a Friday evening, I think, and Peter and Chris came downtown to Don Cox to hear how it had gone, And, I was happy to tell them, yes, we'd exceeded the target, we were oversubscribed and what have you. So by that time, I think we had planned that there was a place called Pepper's Inn, which was like a spot.
I have heard of it.
Yeah, near Gore's factory. And we were going to have a celebration there, really. So a lot of people were waiting for us. So they piled into my Fiat 124 Special, which was a 1974 old car that I had kind of inherited. And so I was driving up through New Kingston on Trafalgar Road, where it intersects with Knutsford Boulevard, and my clutch cable burst right at the light, So these two bankers, because it was my car I was driving, these two bankers in their suits had to come out and push that vehicle into the gas station, And I say, here we are, we just raised all this money and look at it. It just brought us right back down to earth. That's how life goes, So that was a funny story,
I've never heard that story before, though. I don't think you've ever told that story. I've never heard of that one. So it's then, that was a success and all of that. You're an attorney, then why politics? No, you had a successful business, then you co-founded other businesses, and you're doing successfully well, right? Why politics?
Why politics?
Because the story that I heard, which you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that Peter Bwoyatingz, he was going into politics, and because you guys were best friends, he said, hey, maybe we can take a knock at that.
Not really. I mean, he got involved in politics long before me because he ran in 1993.
Whilst you guys were still starting the business.
Yeah, we were just starting the business. So he, and he won. He won in Southeast Clarendon. It's the first time the People's National Party ever won that seat. He beat Hugh Shearer, former Prime Minister.
Right.
I mean, I was his friend. I went down there and did some campaigning with him, but I wasn't really involved in politics at all. How I got into it, in the first decade of this century, in the noughties as I call it, I got to know Omar Davies quite well because he was Minister of Finance.
Yes.
And I was the lawyer for the Jamaica Security Dealers Association. And I was also a lawyer for many of the players in the sector. So on a lot of policy issues to do with regulation and withholding tax and all of that, I was a part of the team that was negotiating or trying to brainstorm with the government to sort out issues. And I got to know him through that.
Yes.
And I was always interested in Jamaican culture, popular music, and he was the MP for South St. Andrew, which is Trenchtown and Jonestown, and so where the Wailers came from, and Alton Ellis, and so many other great artists. So he asked me to come onto his constituency executive, and I decided to do that, and that was about, 2009 or something. I can't remember exactly when. Prior to that, though, when we lost the elections in 2007, Portia Simpson Miller asked me to come into the Senate. We had sold DB&G by then.
Yes.
All right. So that was a kind of half of my daily life working life was dealing with DB&G business. So when that was sold, I had time, and I thought to myself, listen, man, I come from a family of service. That's the tradition of how we operate. I've been very blessed in Jamaica, in terms of what I've been able to achieve for myself personally. And I wanted to give back. I'd always been interested in politics. From I was a teenager, I was quite a radical teenager at the time. I was into, well, as you say, I used to go dancing and things, but I was always moving with the people, Augustown, a lot of my friends were from there. I used to clown with them, I used to do all kind of things which I won't discuss here now. So, So for me, it was an opportunity now to serve in a different way. So really, when Portia asked me to become a senator, that is really what opened the door for me to get into politics.
In 2007. Yeah. Now, what went through your mind at that point when she asked you?
Well, I thought to myself, this sounds interesting. It's a Friday. The Senate sits on a Friday.
Yes.
It was something which you could do without, it wasn't too taxing and all that kind of thing in terms of time. And I thought, I was interested enough. I was sufficiently involved in PNP politics by then as a supporter.
Yes.
And as somebody who had worked in elections and that kind of thing, that I felt it was something worthwhile doing. So I said yes. And then, of course, one thing has just led to another since then.
Yes, because then you were the executive council, you're a part of that, then the party's treasurer, then the minister of justice, so then, that took a life on itself, on its own. I will love that. Now, are you a religious person, Mr. Golding?
Yeah, spiritual and religious to an extent. I mean, I'm a believer in God, and I would call myself a Christian. I draw strength from my faith, and I have a relationship with God through prayer. Yes, but I'm not dogmatic about it. So I would attend a variety of churches, for example. I don't. If I'm invited to church and worship, I enjoy going to different churches to worship. I don't have a kind of religious ideology other than what is in the Bible. Yeah.
I love that. Well, stick and stay. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I asked social media some questions.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted this to be up for 12 to 24 hours. And let me just tell you, Mr. Golding, when it was the 4-hour mark, I saw 100 questions, and I just said to myself, you know what? Yeah, so people are intrigued and they want to know. Okay. So we'll come back from the break. We're going to jump into the questions asked by you.
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten a 6-loving Domino's before?
Well, a rare event.
Mr. Golding.
Can't say it's never happened, but
I'll have you say, I'm a good domino player.
All right.
Right?
Yeah.
But because, all right, I'm all pass. All right.
The man pass. Impossible real in a real life. I was just about to trash talk him up again. You will do it.
Yes. When I draw for double blank, I'm pass again.
All right, well, welcome back. Now we're here with the leader of the opposition, Mark Golding, and we kind of got an insight, into your formative years. Now, in this segment, what I did was I wanted it to be, questions from the public, not just from myself. So I posted a Google Forms link on my social media platforms, and I, told them, send in your questions. And it was a lot. So my producer had to narrow it down, right? Just for the limitations of this video. So I'll call this segment Vision for Jamaica.
Okay.
Cool? And because it's kind of a lot, you can just answer as quickly as possible.
I'll try.
You're right. The first one is, what are your plans to get more young people interested in politics, or generally just the affairs of this country?
Yeah. Well, I think I need to be present where young people are, so we can dialogue, they can hear what I have to say. So this show, for example, it's an effort in that regard, because you have your audience, you're a young Jamaican, and it's an opportunity for them to hear me responding to you and their questions. So that's one example of it. And we try through social media, we've been encouraging people to get enumerated to vote and to get involved. We've had a little campaign on that, which has actually been remarkably successful, I think, in terms of the responses that we've had. So we're doing our part, and it's well known that our party went through a series of leadership challenges over the last 15 years, and that each one of those has resulted in, those challenges are very competitive, and there's always a little turbulence that's left in the wake of those things. So sorting that out and getting everybody back together has been important. And I think part of that is having the right set of people who can, reach out. We have our youth organization headed by two dynamic young ladies, Gabriella Morris, who's the youngest senator, and Peter Gay Ferguson, who was our candidate in Papine, though I don't think she intends to run. But they're both dynamic young Jamaicans, and their role and mandate is to really try and bring us closer to young people. Yeah. And we have the Patriots as well, which is like 30-somethings, the young professionals.
Yes.
And we have Christopher Henry, the General Secretary of the Patriots, who's running for us in North Central St. Andrew, as a young candidate. And we have a lot of young candidates,
Yes.
In Westmoreland we have two, Amokan and Liden. Both of those are councillor candidates, but they're young, impressive young Jamaican professionals. And that's just there are many right across the country. So, that part, bringing young people to the fore. We have a junior shadow cabinet. I'm about to reconfigure it and because, it needs a bit of refreshing now. It's been there for 2 years. I'm about to do that. It gives our young people an opportunity to speak to issues of policy, issues of concern. So it's all part of giving them a voice and showing that we are relevant and concerned about youth issues.
What about the people who thinks that you're not relatable, or there's a disparity because of your upbringing and how privileged you were, and you don't really know what's happening with the Jamaicans who can buy a pound of flour, a pound of rice? What do you say to those people?
Yeah. Well, you are who you are, so I don't really come here to apologize for who I am still, but at the same time, it's how you deal with people and the experiences that you expose yourself to in life, So, in my own family, my wife is from a different social background to me. I've always lived in a way which has exposed myself to how ordinary Jamaican people live. And my constituency is a constituency where there's not a lot of privileged Jamaicans living in South St. Andrew. It is a place with this inner city community with the talent and the vibe and energy of that, but also the difficulties and challenges of that, And as their representative, I'm very aware of what their issues are, because they rely on me to help sort those things out.
Yes.
So I'm constantly fighting that struggle on their behalf. So, I can't deny that I come from a certain background, but at the same time, in terms of who I am and what I deal with and how I approach life and what I've exposed myself to and what my concerns are, they're very much aligned with the everyday Jamaican people.
Yeah. If you were to win the next general election, do you plan on continuing any ventures the now government has started? Is a question from one of.
Do I say if I win?
If you were to win the next general election, do you plan on continuing any ventures the now government has started?
Yes, man. Yes, of course. Yeah, for example, there are infrastructure projects which are underway but haven't been completed yet.
Yes.
And those would, of course, be allowed, we'd finish those. We'd want to continue the build out of the national broadband. We want to expedite it and make it quicker. Because to me, I see internet as a utility like electricity or water now, because it's so critical to everybody's chances in life, whether it be educationally, commercially, whatever. So that is something which we're committed to doing as well. And, let me tell you, when governments change, there's a large percentage of programs which have been worked on for years, which are just starting to be executed.
No, really.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what this government has done is stuff that was initiated under us, including some of these road projects. So there has to be continuity in government, but there will also be a shift of focus and priorities as well. Okay. That because we have a different orientation to the current government when it comes to certain things.
All right, so we can move on to the next question. What are your plans for crime if you should become the next prime minister? Because this is a
huge issue.
Huge issue right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think we need a balanced approach. We need to be extremely firm in dealing with hardcore criminals who are taking the lives of innocent Jamaicans. And we need to have laws which enable the police to effectively tackle the realities on the ground and as to how those people operate. So we've designed what I would call a spearfishing approach, which would allow credible intelligence about persons who create a lot of mayhem to be turned into evidence by having a court-supervised process of detention of those individuals for a finite period of time where their case is built while they are not in the communities, inspiring fear and trepidation among persons who need to provide evidence.
Yes.
And we have designed the legislation around that. It does now needs to be drafted to implement it. We want to empower the police force, looking after our rank and file policemen better, treat them with more respect. For example, there's a court order that they should be paid overtime. So, a year has passed, it's still not implemented. And when the Federation, which is their union's head, speaks out about it, he's been sent on interdiction, like we're some kind of military autocratic state that we're living in. That kind of thing is disrespect to the police and needs to stop. So we want to encourage the police to let them feel that they're very respected and cared for members of our society, because they have a difficult job to do and the society depends on them to do it well and fairly. On the other hand, we have to deal with this pipeline of youths going into a life of crime.
Yes.
We have an education system which is failing.
Yes.
So many of our young people end up leaving school with nothing to show for it. And the problems start early in life. It's not really so much the secondary school system, because it is more the early childhood and primary school systems where the basics are not being absorbed by a high percentage, over 30% of these children who pass through primary school. We have to fix that. We have to make the necessary investments in early childhood education and primary schools to level up the standards, and including the way teachers are trained and the kind of techniques that are used, so that we have the best system of early childhood and primary school education and development in the region, in the hemisphere.
Yeah.
If we're able to do that, then the outcomes of those students will be much better at high school, and they will be able to get into careers which are lawful and which generate income for themselves, instead of them feeling that the system has failed them, no matter the business with them, and they're just in their community, and of course all of the trappings and the attractiveness of badness reach them, and that is why we have this steady flow of persons getting into criminality. We have to deal with that issue.
Now, speaking of teachers, because someone actually asks, if you do win, what will your government do different to retain teachers?
Damien Crawford, who is our spokesperson, Senator Crawford, spokesperson for education, has put forward a series of measures for building retentiveness in the profession for our teachers, including things like reducing their student debt for each year of service that they live, making the motor vehicle concession more attractive as they give over time, as they give service. Generally, the whole package of how the teachers were treated was unsatisfactory. The Minister of Finance basically pressured them into accepting the offer by saying to them that if they didn't sign off on what was on the table by March 31 of this year, their retroactive, which is a lump sum they were all looking forward to, would be deferred indefinitely with no clear payment date.
Wow.
So that was what brought them to signing.
Yes.
Of course, that left a bad taste in the mouths of many teachers, and that is why we've seen this deluge of people leaving the profession, because the truth is that there are, especially for the better teachers, there are opportunities abroad. The teachers are in demand in North America and elsewhere. So we can't pay the level of pay that those countries are able to, because their economies are much stronger. So we have to treat our teachers with respect and do what we can to make their lives better.
Yes.
And he has a series of good ideas around that. Okay. And I look forward to implementing those.
Someone was asking about any plans to offer student loan forgiveness to college students who are not earning a livable income.
Yes. We have a plan where, first of all, we want to eliminate the requirement of guarantors to access a student loan, because we've done our research and we see where the amount collected from guarantors is actually very small, but it's a big barrier to low-income families being able to access student loans because they find difficulty finding those guarantors. Furthermore, we want to restructure the payment terms of student loans so that the obligation is capped at a percentage of the actual income of the student when they leave school and they start to work. So if there's a period of time that they're unemployed or they've lost their job, their payments are actually suspended for that period.
Okay.
And then they get tacked onto the back end of the loan, down the road with no penalties or extra interest charged. So that means the student will have no fear that they will end up on some debt collector's list if they are unable to pay because they're not working or they're not earning sufficiently. So this is an income-based structure for loan repayments, which I think will make a big difference to the lives of our students.
Now, speaking of just living in Jamaica, now housing is so expensive. People my age, obviously, it seems like we can't ever own a home. So when I saw this question, I'm like, this is definitely one of them that needs to be asked.
Yeah.
What changes would you make to the NHT to benefit the housing demand for young working class individuals below the age of 35, aiming to get a property without having to join forces with other NHT contributors?
Yeah. What has happened to the NHT is very, very, is very unfortunate. The $11.4 billion has been taken out of the NHT every year for a 13-year period, and has really depleted its capital base to the point now where it has to be outsourcing lending to the private lending market.
Yes.
And the terms and the approach of private lenders is not the same as NHT, which NHT is a developmental institution to assist people to get houses. Private lenders are there to make money for their shareholders. So it's a very different culture. We need to stop taking that $11.4 billion out of the NHT, which has been going on now since 2013. It was implemented at the time when Jamaica's debt was 147% of GDP.
Right.
We were facing default, and we needed to run a very high surplus so that we could pay down our debt. Our debt has been cut in half as a percentage of GDP since then. But despite that, they have continued to take this $11.4 billion out of the NHT every year, and it has depleted it of resources. That needs to stop. Also, the government needs to do a lot more. It needs to be more proactive in dealing with affordable housing. The government's approach has been to encourage real estate development, yes, by liberalizing the zoning laws so that you can have much more greater densities. That's why you have this proliferation of apartment buildings going on. But they're all uptown, and they're all at prices which a young professional joining the job market or a young entrepreneur cannot afford.
Yes.
We need to incentivize joint ventures between the NHT and other agencies of the state in the housing area and private developers for affordable housing.
Yes.
And that is a catalytic role that the NHT is supposed to play. When we have done, for example, the inner city housing program, where numerous schemes were built which were at affordable prices in areas where there was a problem with inadequate housing solutions. This needs to be continued, but not necessarily in the inner cities, but generally across the country. The NHT must be restored to the role that it was envisioned to play by Michael Manley when he established it for the people of Jamaica in the 1970s. And that means it has to be adequately resourced, not depleted of its resources, and it has to be refocused and repurposed to its original mission. And there's a role to play with the private developers as well, but the necessary incentives need to be put in place so that they will be minded to deliver affordable housing, as used to happen, as opposed to this proliferation of apartments and townhouses at price points which are not accessible to the younger aspiring homeowner.
Yeah. Okay, next question. The retirement age for Jamaicans, will you increase it, or is this only for politicians?
That's a great point. Well, first of all, politicians don't have a retirement age. We have people in parliament in their 80s, So the question of whether we should have term limits is a live issue. And I think there needs to be a a proper discussion, a structured discussion around that, because it's not really an emotional, it's not something you can approach just from an emotional standpoint. They have to look at the practicalities of the issues. But certainly the retirement age, I think, needs to be shifted a bit later. People are living longer. With modern medicines and a better nutrition and lifestyle, people can enjoy productive years beyond what was the case 100 years ago or 50 years ago when these rules were set. So, I think, for example, judges, just for one profession, ought to be able to continue to sit later than where they now the current retirement age, because many of them after they retire continue to provide similar services as arbitrators and so on, and so they have you're losing talent. But at the same time, if you don't have a retirement age, it's very hard to have upward mobility for the people who are coming next.
Yes.
So you have to strike a balance. But I do think that, well, first of all, the retirement age for women was moved from 60 to 65 over the last 10 years. That there has been that shift to equalize men and women at that retirement age. I think it's something we can look at, but it needs to be properly considered because it has multiple implications.
Yeah. Okay, next question here is the unity in your party. It seems like the PMP is all over the place as it pertains to cohesiveness.
Yeah, well, that's not the case. The leadership of the party is united. The leadership of the party is cohesive. We brainstorm on a daily basis what's going on and what we plan to do about it. There are some peripheral elements that are not even members of our party who are masquerading as supporters, but are in fact underminers, and who have a presence in social media and lead to the kind of image that your questioner has raised. But they are not part of the party. They're not part of the apparatus of the party or the decision-making of the party. So I would say that in terms of the leadership and middle management of the party, it's a democratic institution, so you're not going to have everybody agreeing with everything all the time.
Yes.
But we are all committed to the common purpose of what our mission is, which was restated a year ago at the annual party conference with a new document, which is our restated philosophy for this century. And we're moving forward on the basis of that philosophical framework to develop policies that are consistent with that, which is all about empowering people and eliminating discrimination and the inequities in the society, making it a more inclusive society that all feel that they are somebody and everybody has an equal place and can aspire to achieve their goals and dreams.
Yes.
This is what we are about, and we always have been. But the tactics, the specific measures that achieve that need to be adjusted because, time doesn't stand still and things change.
Yes.
So you have to be flexible. But yeah, I would say that the party is as united as it's ever been since I've been involved in it.
Yeah, okay, nice. I'll just ask you two more questions in this segment.
Sure.
This one was a kind of bit, physical appearance is very important, especially for public figures. Have you ever considered a revamp of your image? And would you ever consider consulting a stylist?
I do have a stylist.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, that's why I'm wearing such...
This shirt today?
Yeah,
okay, nice.
Yeah,
nice,
absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
I see.
I realize, that physical appearance is of importance.
Yes.
So I would say my personality is not one which is particularly absorbed with that as an issue. I'm more about substance.
Yes.
Yeah, and about what is actually said and done. But I do realize that for many people, appearances are important.
Yes.
So I think I've made significant adjustments in that regard.
I think you've improved, of course. Yeah. I can give you those props, Mr. Golding. I think that you've improved, of course. Now, the final question in this segment is, if your party loses the next election, are you willing to step down as the leader of the People's National Party?
Well, we're not planning to lose the next election. We're planning to win the next election, and the polls suggest that we will. If that were to change, the party would have a decision to make. And, I would be looking at the circumstances then prevailing as to whether I still consider myself to be the person best able to take the party forward or not, and I would make a decision then. But I have no plans to give up. You know, I'm only just getting going.
Only just getting started. All right. Well, that was the question and answer segment. Our questions provided by you. The next segment will be about your family and your hobbies. All right. We're going to take a quick break. Once again, we're still here with the Honorable, the Opposition Leader, Mark Golding. And I'm loving the conversation thus far, Mark.
Thank you.
Come on, loving it, man. You're very relaxed and I like that. All right, let's just take a quick break. Now, I asked Mr. Golding, because I know that you're an avid reader, so I asked you to bring a couple of books, right?
Right.
And I'm seeing here the Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey.
Yes.
I'm seeing Daylight Come.
That's a book by Diana Macaulay. Yeah.
Right. I'm seeing some more Marcus Garvey things. I'm seeing one by Chris Blackwell, The Islander.
Yeah.
If you have to choose between all these books that you have here, which is your favorite?
Oh, my favorite? Wow. Well, I think the Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey is a vital book.
Yes.
You know, and it ought to be distilled into messages that our children can easily absorb, so that we have a strong sense of identity among our young children growing up. We have too many vestigial remnants of colonial thinking and attitudes that hold back our country by diminishing our love of self, and it's conducive to all kinds of behaviors which we want to avoid. So I think Marcus Garvey needs to be central to how we feel as a people, how we believe in ourselves. He said, emancipate yourself from mental slavery, and he has given us the tools to do that. Yes. We need to use them and make sure that our schools embrace that.
I was about to ask you that, because I kind of feel like we don't have conversations enough in schools about the contributions that our national heroes have made, right? Yeah. And it's upon now, your big age, you're reaching a big age, you start doing your reading, you're just like, why am I not taught these things? Yeah. And I think that, these things need to be integrated in schools. Yeah.
We do things like, a lot of schools will have portraits of the heroes on walls and so on, which is great. But we actually need to have the thinking behind their work and their achievements and how they approach life. That needs to be taught so that people start to say, apply that to themselves and their approach in life. And they can, stand up as individuals who believe in themselves, that they're no less than anybody else, and they're proud of how they look and they're proud of who they are, and they can move forward from there.
All right, now this little segment here, it's about your family. And I know that you're very private, but in terms of your kids, you're very private with your kids.
Yes.
3 children.
Yeah.
And a grandchild.
Yeah.
That decision to not have your kids all over social media, why was that?
Well, I just thought it was fair to them that I shouldn't. The fact that I allowed my path to take a particular course, which has exposed me to the public, to the vagaries of public opinion, the misinformation, the downright dishonesty of a lot of the communication that's out there. I didn't think it was fair on them to expose them to that as well.
Right.
My children are now adults. The youngest of my children is about to be 26. So, for much of their lives, I was not a public figure.
Right.
And I didn't think that it was fair or right for me to kind of bring them along with me in this journey. Well, they need to have they can choose their own path.
Right.
And
made that decision and say, hey, fine.
Yeah, it's up to them. And I don't. So I've always respected their right to privacy.
Okay. How did you meet your wife? Because I have a funny story that I heard.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll tell
I heard
you.
that your friend was, trying to date her.
Yeah.
And he was trying to let you date her friend.
Yeah.
Like a double date.
Yes.
And then you go outside, and then there's a dancing competition. But you're not much of a dancer, Mr. Golding. But I heard that you guys won that dancing competition.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
That was, I think I was 19 at that time. And, I had a brethren who I used to par with at the time. He was older than me.
Yes.
He knew my wife. And, I got to know her, and a friend of hers went on this double date, as they call it. We ended up at Turntable Club.
Yes.
And, I kind of like my wife.
You never like the friends, he likes her.
Yeah, more, she was more my, and then they had this little dance competition thing, and she and I ended up dancing, and, put on give it our best shot, and we ended up winning dinner for two.
Yeah.
At Paul's 104 on Harbour Street.
Yeah. So what did your virgin say at that time, though? Because
him cool, man.
Him cool with it.
Yeah, man.
He was okay.
Yeah, man. I'm glad, and he's still my friend. Yeah, man. Yeah.
How did you know that she was the one? And at what moment you were like, you know what, I'm gonna take the next step and marry you?
Wow. Well, we were together for like 6 years before we got married.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to university in the UK, in England. And our relationship survived that. Yeah. We kept in touch. When I was here, we used to hang out, and so just generally speaking, we've just kind of always, we're different. She has her friends. I have mine. We have mutual friends, but we give each other space. But she's a very, I would say, calm.
Yes.
And loving individual, and she has a certain kind of self-assurance, which I admire about her. Yes. And she's very comfortable about who she is, and I just rate her. To me, she's a strength that, behind what I do.
Yes.
I rely on her as my rock.
Yes.
And I'm very, very blessed to have her.
Okay. What do you do for fun outside of work?
Yeah.
Because if somebody asks me, what do you do for fun? I work.
Yeah.
But, Mark Golding, what is fun for you now?
Yeah.
At this point in
At this point in time?
Yes.
All right. So I like films and
what is your favorite movie?
Wow. Right now?
Off the top of your head.
The Martian.
I don't think I've ever seen that
You
before.
better watch it.
What's it about?
It is about mission to Mars.
Okay.
And while they're there, something goes terribly wrong, and they have to evacuate. But one guy gets left behind, Matt Damon, and it's how he survives until they're able to come for him.
So I'm going to watch that movie.
It's wicked, man.
So you like watching movies?
I do.
Do you like going to the beach?
I do, but I wish I could go more often. But I don't get to that. When we have some time off, yes, I like going to the beach.
Okay.
I obviously I read a lot, and I love football and cricket. Those are I'm chairman of Anigans Football Club. I know that. So I'm very involved in football locally through that, and I was part of we have a new thing called the Professional Football Jamaica Limited that has taken over the responsibility of the Premier League. Mm-hmm. And I was part of the team that conceptualized that and implemented it. So, I feel that team has done a lot to put Jamaican football, professional football, on a stronger footing. Mm-hmm. And, I want to big up the team, that's been working on that. And Chris Williams is the chairman now of it, and he's doing a great job in trying to bring sponsorship on board to support local football, because it needs that to grow. But the talent and the potential is there.
Right there.
Yeah. So football,
when you used to play football back in the day, and you're still so integrated in football. Yeah. If you have a politician football match one day for charity, Mr. Golding, would we see you on that field?
I don't try a thing, yes.
Which position you play?
Boy, I would have played. I would say defensive midfield, I don't have the pace is not going to be the strong point, but a strong tactical appreciation of space and what needs to be covered, and I have a very educated left foot. I can put the ball exactly where it's supposed to go.
Benny like Beckham. All right, okay. Back in the day, you know what? I'll say that for the speed round. All right. Final question for this is, your favorite place in Jamaica?
Wow.
Outside of politics and work,
I love the Blue Mountains,
Yeah?
Yeah, I love high up in the Blue Mountains. I love the temperature up there. I love the flora, the kind of vegetation you get up there, the little streams running out to the hillside, the mountainside, and the coolness of it. I just love the clouds, the mistiness of it. Yeah, so that is really my favorite part of Jamaica. Yeah.
I've never... Wow. Okay, nice. Yeah. We'll take a quick break and go to the speed round because I have some speed questions to ask you. So get your thinking cap on.
All right.
You don't have not even a minute to think about these answers.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just throw these questions at you and the first thing that comes to your mind, you'll respond with, okay?
All right.
So that's right after this break.
Okay.
So I think I've gotten to know you just a little bit more, to be honest with you. Outside of the suits and those speeches and things, this is a conversation that I needed as a citizen of Jamaica myself to get to know, you as Mark Golding, the person. All right, so this now is the speed section. Right?
All right.
This is the game section of the show. And I want to see how cool you are now, Mr. Golding. You can't let me down,
All right.
Understand? Because right now, you're the upper now,
Okay.
So you can't go down there. All right. So, when I ask you a question, you give me a quick response. No time to think.
No time.
Okay. What's the scariest thing you've ever done?
I was once in a little sailing boat and it turned over outside the harbor when I was about 12, and that was very frightening.
Mighty God. Okay. What's your biggest regret?
Wow. My biggest regret. That's a tough one.
You can't think.
Yeah, I would say some of the mistakes I've made along the way.
Yes.
If I knew then what I know now, I would have probably handled them better.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
What's a bad habit you have?
Bad habit. Taking on a bit too much and not really relying on others sufficiently.
Okay. Have you ever smoked weed before?
Weed?
Yeah. That is it. Rate the PMP party out of 10 right now, currently.
11.
What's one thing on your bucket list?
Wow. I'm looking forward to one day, my wife and I being able to spend some time to do some more traveling.
That's so nice.
Some parts of the world we haven't been to yet.
Yeah.
Africa in particular. I've been to Africa, but there are parts of Africa we haven't visited yet.
Oh, nice. I love that. When was the last time you cried?
Wow. Last time I bawled was when my father died. Yeah, that was a long 96.
Yeah.
Well, it was a series of bawling then,
Yes.
But since then, I can't even remember. I'm sure I've cried, I maybe watching some sad movie or something.
You like sad movies?
Not particularly, but sometimes you watch them.
Okay. What is your guilty pleasure? Like watching reality TV, maybe?
Eating sweet foods,
Really?
Yeah, like nice cake and chocolate and them something there. That is something that I need to carefully try and manage.
When I call these names, I'm going to call about 5 names. And the first word that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Angela Bromberg.
Loyal.
Okay. Portia Simpson Miller.
Inspirational.
Peter Phillips.
Solid as a rock.
Andrew Holness.
Trying youth.
Lisa Hanna.
Gorgeous personality.
Very. What's one thing that your wife would cuss you about all the time?
Well, she warns me not to say things in public that I might regret.
Oh, okay. Okay. Your favorite prime minister of all time?
Michael Manley.
Okay. What's your favorite sport out of cricket or football?
But I love the two of them, Yeah, in different ways, but I love both. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The top 5 songs on your playlist.
Wow.
See your phone right there, so show me your playlist right now. Oh, and I want to see the top 5 songs that is on there. Please and thank you.
Yeah. Well, I have here, wow, there's a lot.
I'm seeing the playlist, by the way, people.
Yeah.
I should maybe take a look.
Well, all right, for example, I would have to put Bob Marley in there. Yeah. I'd have to put, Trenchtown Rock.
Yes,
if I choose one for the sake of it, yeah.
So that's
Peter Tosh, I would have to put a Peter, legalize it,
Yes,
maybe. I have to put in a Sizzla Kalanji, I have Dry Cry in here.
Yes.
Yeah, I have Cry for the Youth by Supercat.
Yeah.
And I have, Betcha by Golly Wow by the Stylistics. How about that?
Not no bad.
Yeah.
That's a nice list.
Yeah.
That is a nice list. I'm impressed. Okay. Let me see.
Your favorite track and field moment?
I saw what you did for Jadon Hibbert.
I love the relays,
Yeah.
When
4x1s or 4x4s?
Well, the 4x1s, I think that's for the explosive excitement of it.
Yeah.
There's something incredible about watching that baton change
In that short space of time.
Yeah, and then when we just busted corner and we're coming around the curve and we just run, we left them. Yeah, I love that. Men and women.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That never bad. You see? What was bad?
No.
Well, but that concluded the speed round segment. I must say, Mr. Golding, it was my pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
It was my pleasure for you to even agree to have this, exclusive sit down with me.
Yeah, man.
When I heard about it, I was elated, and I ensured that I covered all bases, right?
Yeah.
Politics and everything else.
Yeah.
And getting to know you was a vibe. It's a vibe, master, man. I didn't know that any at all. I must also say all the best, in the upcoming elections.
Thank you. Well, Karim, I just want to thank you for having me. I want to thank you for the research you put into it.
Yes.
You prepared for this thing.
Yes.
And it must have been some work.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just want to big you up for that. I think that's a hallmark of good journalism.
Thank you so much.
And I think you have a far way to go. So let's keep it up.
Yes.
Enough respect.
All right, boss. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate it. All right, well, that was it. The Mark Golding, the opposition leader, right? We hear about music, we hear about his relationships, we hear about everything else you can think of, right? And once again, go out and vote for whichever party you want to vote for. But he would say to vote for the PNP.
Yeah, put it by the head.
All right,
Exercise the head.
All right, that's it. All right, thank you.
All right.